If you have a Bible, I want to invite you to open me to Luke chapter 15. So this is day 7 in this journey through these mountains that we've gone on, seeing so many different things, seeing the Word. And as we've seen so many different things, there's no way to describe the scenes in these mountains. Just majestic glory of God on display in creation. And today is no different, even as it's gotten considerably warmer. I'm sitting in front of a glacier lake right now. There's a couple of glaciers on the mountains behind me, and it's just majestic beauty. And you could almost be tempted to think like, this is what heaven rejoices over. This is what awes people. But I want you to read with me in Luke chapter 15, and I want you to hear what God rejoices over in a way that's greater than even his glory in creation, that we should rejoice over in a way that's greater than even his glory in creation. You think about these stories, and I think the common theme is clear. Like, the point that Jesus is making is clear. In every single one of these stories, there's a focus on the one. It's one sheep out of 100. It's one coin out of 10. It's one son, although obviously the second son plays into the third story there. But in each story, you had one that was lost, and then the one was found, and it led to total celebration. And Jesus, just to make sure we don't miss the point, says this is what heaven rejoices over. Like, this is what causes angels to erupt. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it. Like, what causes angels to erupt? Like, God, all of his creation, all around us, you would think that's what causes angels to erupt in worship. But no, Jesus says, what causes angels to erupt is when one person who was lost is found. Like, just one. The picture's clear. God is passionate about the one. Specifically, God is passionate about finding the one. I think about different stories that I've told from these mountains, even different statistics I've shared. One thing I've learned is people in need are easier to forget until you know their names. Like, as long as they're just numbers, like this many people, millions in these mountains, or these many people struggling with this need, these many thousands who are trafficked, like, as long as they're just numbers, I think we can keep a pretty safe distance. But everything changes when you know their names. When you know Kylie, a young girl who was taken from her village and taken down into the city and put to work in a brothel. Like, when you know her name and you see her face, everything changes. Malkit, he's a boy, was a teenager now, but he was born with cerebral palsy, and because his family thought he was cursed, this physical condition was a picture of the spirits not being happy with their family or with him individually. He was actually chained outside to the barn next to his home until he was 10 years old, when somebody was walking along and found him and began working with his family to say, hey, we'll take care of this boy. And so they did. But so Malkit, like, picture the face of a child chained to a barn with cerebral palsy. Or maybe picture Nima, like, she's a young girl growing up in a village where her parents and her grandparents and their parents have never even heard the name of Jesus. Like once you see the faces and you're vulnerable enough to get to know their names, everything changes. You can't get their names out of your mind. That's one of the takeaways I hope you walk away from this journey with, like a willingness to get past the numbers and get to know the names of people who are in urgent need, like right around you and in places far from you. You get to know their names and you bring the good news of the God who knows their names and the God who loves them and the God who is seeking after them, the God who is passionate about the one. Yes, God cares for 7 billion people in the world right now who he has created. He loves them all. 2 Peter 3:9 makes clear God desires all of their salvation. At the same time, he loves the many. He is passionate about the one. And we have the greatest news in the world to share with Kylie, with Malkit, with Nima. The God of the universe, the God who created glaciers, the God who created mountains, the God whose glory is on display everywhere in creation. This God is passionate about you. Like just think about that in your own life. Like God is passionate about you. In my time with God this morning, just sitting on the side of a mountain, I was just overwhelmed with his love for me. Just so struck by his grace in my life in so many different ways. It just brought me to tears. It was so overwhelming. And it's not just for me. Like it's for every single one of us. I just want to encourage you right where you're sitting. Like, yes, this journey has been a lot about others in need and God's love for them. But I want to remind you of God's love for you. God is passionate about the one, which means God is passionate about you. Like substitute your name. Heaven rejoices over your salvation, over you coming into relationship with God, over you knowing his love. And then when you have the opportunity to share this good news with somebody else, to show God's love, share God's love with somebody else, and they receive it, heaven goes crazy, like erupts in worship. And you and I get to be a part of seeing that happen. Like talk about celebration. This is what God has created us to live for. God could easily take us straight up to heaven once he saves us, but he's not done that. He's left us here in a world of urgent spiritual and physical need, and he's left us here for a reason, to make the good news of his grace and his love known to ones around us and ones around the world, like Kylie. So if I could just pick up her story, she's no longer in a brothel because somebody cared enough to go to her and work to bring her out. And Kylie now lives in a home that it helps girls who've been rescued from trafficking be restored. Kylie's smile on her face, even amidst the brokenness she's walked through in her life, is evidence of the grace of God, and she knows that God is passionate about her. Malkit was taken from being chained to a barn into a place where he was cared for. And now, as a teenager, Malkit, though obviously still has cerebral palsy, like you should see the smile on his face as people who have loved and cared for him and told him about God's love for him have totally turned his life upside down. It will cause you to rejoice. And then Nima, I mentioned her like nobody in her village for generations, for all we know, at any point has ever believed in Jesus. She recently, like I just heard a story today about how Nima was baptized in a glacier lake. Like the first person from her village ever to trust in Jesus and enter into personal relationship with God. And she went into a glacier lake and professed faith in Jesus. And when she did, I guarantee you, heaven was erupting in praise to God. So let's remember what causes heaven to rejoice, and let's live to make heaven rejoice. I just want to encourage you to think about your life, your family, your church, your group, to think together about how you can live to be passionate about the one as a reflection of the God who is passionate about the one. So you may come into these mountains one day, or you may not, but wherever you go in the world, just know that as you share the good news of God's love with other people, that they might receive it. When you do that, wherever you are causing heaven to erupt in ways that glaciers and mountains in the Himalayas can't even begin to compare.